Is this everybody?
Hurt there. We got a few more.
This is as good as it gets.
Okay. Same gig here. I'm fixing to turn y'all loose on a case study. I'm going to give you to about 25 after on this one.
Where's the
Discuss it.
Where's the paper?
Appoint a spokesperson for the class. Give a brief conclusion as to how you handle the situation. We'll have some discussion and we'll try to follow in a second. Everyone ready? Everyone ready? Is there a different pattern somewhere? I've got them. I hate to say I got 3 or 4 copies here. It's going to be a little different. And all I had was all my instructions were I could put it on the screen, but obviously we're going to redo it. I have 2 or 3 others here.
Just check them.
Okay. For you. All right. The case study is known as Show Me the Money. You've got Danny, the auction sales representative, Betty, the finance bookkeeper, and Mr. Mann, M-A-N-N, with 2 N's, the seller. You couldn't stay away, could you?
They told me, get on back up there.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Danny, who is our auction sale representative, and the auction team have just completed a business liquidation for Mr. Mann. Due to economic fluctuations, Mr. Mann was liquidating much of his holdings to raise cold cash money. Everyone is pleased with the excellent auction results on auction day, and as the bookkeeping center was closing for the day, Mr. Mann walks in, looks at the cash till and says, my, I do like cash money. And he asks if there's any way he could get the cash from today's auction now to help pay for some pressing bills. Danny informs Mr. Mann as much as he'd like to, the cash has to be deposited along with all the other payments from the auction, but the company will work hard to make the settlement as quick as possible. A few days later, Betty, that fine auction bookkeeper that we have, prepares a draft settlement package and sends it to Mr. Mann for his review. Upon review, Mr. Mann indicates rather than having a single settlement for all the proceeds, he'd like to divide the items into 2 separate settlements. One settlement will be in the name of his company. The other will be in the name of a friend that has lent him some money, borrowed money from him a few months back when he was going through some tough times. Betty indeed revises the settlement to reflect the changes Mr. Mann requested, but prior to sending it back, meets with Danny, the auction sales representative, for him to review it. During the meeting, Betty indicates she's uncomfortable with this type of settlement, and based on Mr. Mann's request for cash in advance the day of the auction, she believes Mr. Mann may be attempting to avoid reporting some of this income for income tax purposes. What would you do? What are the relevant facts? What are the ethical issues? Who are the stakeholders? What are the possible alternatives? And what action should be taken by Danny and by Betty? Who wants to know? I'll see y'all in about 20 minutes.
One big group.
Y'all are one big group. The other class found it very easy to go ahead and appoint a moderator who was up ahead of the class who directed the conversation for the next 20 minutes.
I elect. Yes. There you go, Bill.
Let's see, so what are the relevant facts here? Who would like to start? Relevant facts. Let's have one of the Robs get us started. Sure.
I'll start.
Okay, perfect. Cindy, thank you. Absolutely.
We have an auction here, we have a bookkeeper, and we have a seller who's in debt.
Okay. Are there any other relevant facts?
He's made a request to alter the original payment scheme.
Okay.
Steve, I like that.
Contract.
I like arrangement better.
Arrangement, Steve. Any
With
other-
this guy, I think it's probably more of a scheme.
Anything else that's left out? We're good on that? All right, so what are the ethical issues?
Well, one of them is tax, the attempt of tax evasion.
This conspiracy to commit tax evasion.
She's not real sure on that.
Because she did do it, but then raised the issue after starting the process. But nonetheless, she was aware.
You need to have a UCC, because it may not be tax purposes, he may owe everybody and their brother. That may be the case, it may not be the tax deal, so if I paid them, you know, it actually, the UCC needs to go in and see what's really going on.
Right. Everybody hear that?
But it's not your job to monitor somebody else's tax applications. It's not your job.
So, but back to the question at hand, what is the ethical issue?
Back to the debt, it's not an issue because it doesn't state whether or not, it's just, hey, good old boy owes me some money, it doesn't have anything to do with what I sold for him. If there's no liens against that property, then it's irrelevant.
Anybody?
I mean, maybe I need to wash my hands, but as I'm reading this, it's not actually immediately clear to me what they are just based on these pure facts. If somebody told me Mr. Mann had partners in this business, if Mr. Mann was a corporation, then I could come up with all sorts of evidence. But if a sole proprietor wants me to give someone his business money, one place and someone else.
What about the original arrangement? Would that, we don't touch on, you know, what the agreement was?
Like, again, ask the question. Has anybody here ever paid their consignment cash?
Yes. Not to be a writing receipt, if they don't owe any money on anything, I didn't know
What the contract say?
Well, my contract says payment is paid.
Who signed it?
But, you know, it's not,
Okay, perfect, I will. Let's get back to the question at hand though, because that makes this all helps. But we gotta work with the information that we know on this case, what's been given to us, and then what we take from it. So, who thinks there was an ethical issue, and if so, what was it?
Well, I mean, I think you gotta pay, your contract is not with this third party guy that Mr. Mann's talking about. First of all, your contract is with Mr. Mann, so to me, it's very clear where the money goes.
You agree with that?
Yes.
So the ethical issue is what, that they're
Well,
changing direction midstream?
The ethical issue, she has an idea of what they're trying to do, which is avoid, for tax purposes, or, you know, trying to hide some money. So the ethical issue there is that.
Isn't the
That's wrong.
question-
But the relevant facts to me is that, you know, Mr. Mann signed the contract, not Mr. Mann's friends. Who cares about Mr. Mann's friends?
So the ethical part is just the fact that they're questioning, is this legal? Is this above the order? Are they trying to get around it? So they're, in her action, she's addressing the ethical issue, I think. What do you guys think?
Even if it's not an ethical violation, it's almost assuredly a violation of the contract to pay out to somebody who didn't sign it.
And it's also another possibility that if there was a certain tax level, if you got to X amount of dollars, and then they have to report above that, if you make it less than that amount, they may be not just trying to evade taxes altogether, but trying to evade taxes. I mean, we've had a consignor ask us to do a very similar thing, write me 2 checks so that they won't be above $10,000.
So they have to fill out a CTR to bank.
Right.
Right, they didn't want it to be a certain amount so that it would get reported immediately to the IRS, and they thought we were going, it didn't matter because the whole thing wasn't as much as they thought, but they were assuming they were going to get a whole lot more than they did.
All right, who are the stakeholders?
Right.
Richard,
Checks.
auction company? Anybody else? Who are the stakeholders here?
Mr. Mann,
Are the players and stakeholders same thing? Back, yes? Are the players and the stakeholders the same
Oh,
thing?
excuse me, I thought you were talking to you, Greg. There could be stakeholders that are not in the actual case.
Like the creditors.
People that could be affected by the errors being made here.
Yeah, creditors.
So I think you're right, IRS is a stakeholder.
Mr.
All the
Mann's good
players
friend who
here
he wants the money sent to.
are a stakeholder. The friend is a stakeholder.
It could be anybody. You don't have
Put
to-
down,
Vito?
It could be a publicly traded company too. If there were stockholders in that auction company, they would be stakeholders as well.
Anybody associated with this transaction is technically a stakeholder. All right. So what are the possible alternatives?
Rewrite the contract.
Saying what?
you can't.
Saying that the seller requests to have it, should have a part of that.
I would just cut it straight to the seller, tell them I can't do it.
Yeah.
There you go.
Who would stick with the original contract?
Look, it's the smart people.
Oh, stop
Who
it.
would make the amendment? Would anybody want to change it?
I mean, right, if he wrote the contract between me and him originally, he's had to change it. I work with him. I agree with you. I agree with you.
It's not
Did you-
Sounds to me like they're both possible.
Did you just say he was entitled to change the contract? I couldn't hear you.
Yeah, I'm surmising that he had the authority to enter into the contract to begin with.
It takes two to tango.
So I would want to.
That's right, it takes both of them.
Yeah, I mean,
If he'd like to amend his own contract.
Yeah, and then you'd have to agree.
But their answer is the answer that's being asked here is what are the alternatives? You can stick with the contract as is.
Yeah.
You can make an addendum to the contract.
It takes two to have a contract, and you're the other party, but you tell him, no, we're gonna stick to the original
You
contract.
have that right.
And that's what
I agree with
That's-
that.
that's-
But we're looking at alternatives, so
Right, right.
there's two. Are there any other alternatives?
But you can fairly have a private deal a long time. Okay, what if we find with an out-of-state bank? I mean, that you don't know, you just use these feed checks.
Yeah, that's just
But then all of a sudden, the guy comes clean, he's on.
Yeah.
But yeah, you can say you should pay your guy afterwards, but we have a contract with you.
to get that guy paid.
Right.
If you as the auction company agree to amend it to do whatever it is that he wants to do for whatever reason, that puts you at risk.
What really?
Well,
It's his money.
yeah, it is his money. But if you're giving it to third parties, and I'm part of that.
We agree with him. We give the money to the third party, and then he comes back and says, well, I didn't get my check. He takes you to court.
Wait a minute.
If I
Or
knew
not
for a fact that he's
Exactly.
not gonna pay taxes, then that's one thing. If I don't have a knowledge of that, and he says, look, here's the way I want to disseminate my dollars, I mean.
Better have it in writing. Otherwise, it's gonna come back and say, where's my money?
I agree with saying it in the contract.
I mean, my question about the
It's
third
not
party,
fair if you know or not.
my question about the third party is that, I mean, if he gave you bank account information, you know, that would be a third party, forming my trust more, but if they lost the money, we kind of have the same,
That's
situation.
probably one of the alternatives.
My first
Yeah, the one before. All right, so here, last question then is, what action should be taken by Danny and Beth? What
Last time I
action?
checked, I'm an auction
Check out.
company, not a bank.
What action should be taken by Danny and Beth?
We think they should write the check, right to the,
Stick
Mr.
to the
Mann,
contract.
be done with it, and Mann can write whatever checks he wants.
How many people agree with that?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Stick to the contract as written, pay your guy outside of this deal.
This is how we're gonna sort it out. The last time I checked, I'm an auction company, not a bank.
All right. I think we're done. All right. I'm sorry, I will leave you out to entertain. It's not just the question.
The auction here over the other night, did that all kinds of
Class.
I'm sorry, I was visiting back there, I wasn't listening to what are y'all gonna do? Because, I mean, you have the questions here, but here we are, this is where it is, I'm Mr. Man, and if we wanna make this work, what are you gonna do with me? So, what's the decision, what are we gonna come up with here?
We had a contract with you, we serviced our end of that contract, payment was a part of that contract, and that payment was designed to go to you. If you have a friend that you'd like to pay outside of that, that's up to you, but we're gonna stick to our contract at hand.
Okay, very good. Ask you this, let's talk, because the debate in the first part of the question is cash. How do you feel about cash? I had some in the last class that says, guys, our state law allows us to pay cash. What do you feel about that?
What strikes me about a lot of this is that there's a difference between legal questions and smart business decisions. Handing money to some shady guys might be something. Well, if he was having direct funds to someone else, I mean, that might just be a foolish business thing.
Okay, but before we even know that he was directed to someone else and gonna come back with another plan, he just said, guys, look, you're gonna owe me X in 10 days, and there is way less than X in that cash drawer. I'm kind of in a tight, can I get a little advance on it? Okay,
No, you can't track cash. I mean, you can track a check.
Sign this promissory note.
you can track cash with a receipt. Say, hey, will you sign a receipt for the cash? Okay, how much cash are we talking about? We're talking about $120,000.
Jump
Day one. What?
Jump the game.
Chump change. like I told the last class, you know, when they come to you and say, you know, put on the bracelets, it's like, I didn't know laundering money. I don't know what laundering money is. Only I launder stuff in Tide, let me tell you. Okay, but Danny's smart enough to say, no, I'd love to help you, but I'm gonna put the cash in the escrow account, and then I'm gonna pay it out. But then he comes back and says, wait a minute, how about if we do this? I want 2 settlements on this account. One to me and one to my buddy. Now, can you make settlements to third parties, additional payouts to third parties on a settlement with your seller?
Well, I mean, almost in the contract.
Could. Would it be smart to? No. You could. Would it be smart to?
We do it all the time.
Yeah.
The Napa Auto Store fronted us $650 for batteries. You know, rather than coming through our account, paying it out, we're just gonna take it on the seller's behalf and just charge to the seller. We write the check right to the Napa. What's wrong with that?
Well, it's probably in your agreement, isn't it?
That we can deduct any expenses and things such as that. Does the seller have the authority to direct us how to pay out the money? What's the difference in him saying, I want you to wire it to this account versus wire it to that account? Do you know how that account's titled? When he gives you wiring instructions, do you ever go and verify, well, what is the name of that account, and do I have the authority to wire it in there? Really and truly, we wire a lot of money. They tell us what the account name is. They tell us the wiring number. How do we know that's the right account goes into it?
What if it's in the Bahamas?
Don't want to go there. So, can the seller direct us to pay the money separately? Where is the real problem here? It's not how he wants to pay the money out, because I would say if he tells me, David, I want you to pay Joe $50,000, and I reflect that on the settlement statement that under the seller's direction, he authorized me to pay this money out, and he signs off on it, I have the authority to do that. But is that what he did in this? What did he do? He came up and said, I don't own, or he's trying to say, I don't own all of this equipment. It's 100 pieces of equipment. There are 50 pieces of equipment that should not have even been in my name. Let's put them in Joe's name. Okay? So that you do set your settlements, and I'll sign my settlement for you saying, you know, I'm Mr. Man, and I take receipt on, and I know you paid me $60,000. But my other buddy over here, who I owe 60, I don't even want it to flow through me and he look like I own it. So first of all, then what do we have a problem with? Do we have a contract with a third party?
No.
And what do we think maybe, why in the world would he not want to take the equipment in his own name? Taxes, okay? You know, he may have depreciated all this stuff and have no basis in this, and it's all going to be taxable, but if he can just slide it off out of sight, out of mind, and never shows back around, you know, that money comes back to him. Okay, who's the stakeholders? And y'all did a pretty good job. Who are the outside stakeholders? IRS. But in addition to the IRS, who could it be?
Bank.
Let's go down the IRS path. Let's think real personal about this. Who are the stakeholders? On the chain of the IRS. The IRS is very big and impersonal, right?
You mean the citizens? I mean, us, all of us?
Bingo. If we believe there is an evasion of taxation, we are all stakeholders because, you know, and I love it on Fox this morning, and I don't want to chase a rabbit here. They're talking about how in Miami, you know, they recalled their mayor. And they were all chapped because taxes were going up. You know, and even though the property values have been coming down on the market, they had not adjusted the values for taxation. Well, let me tell you something. Relative to all of us who own property, your values as they change, as long as they're changing in proportion to time, if we're all being overtaxed, that's really not, or over a value. That's not a problem, because understand, the value of our homes is one thing, or our property that we have. When it comes down to it, the county, the state's going to look up and say, look, we need $30 million to fund this year's budget. It doesn't matter what the digest is. If they lower all the property values down, what are they going to do? They're going to raise the millage rate because they have to get dollars. They're not looking for value of real estate. So if all these people say, wonderful, my $400,000 house is now only worth $250, we'll find the digest will come down, and they'll still look up and say, but we still need $30 million. So the tax rate will go up. So this type of action affects every one of us. So if he's sitting there, and I believe potentially he's trying to evade income taxes. I believe the most appropriate response is to say, well, thank you. We'll make the payment on one settlement. If you want me to pay your friend, we'll make it on one settlement, but all of the equipment will be on that settlement. So that they come back and say, guys, no, you know, the money may not hit his account, but I have record people where he signed it. Okay?
Just like a
Wow.
just like a real estate HUD.
You know, whether he was secured or not, you don't know. All right, you want to do another one?
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
So much fun with this guy. Get him out of town. All right. The golden opportunity. You have Steve, a senior auction sales rep. Jimmy, the new up-and-coming sales representative in training. Doug, the owner of Up-and-Coming Auctioneers. Mary, the marketing manager. Ben, the owner of Top Bid Auctions, and XYZ Bank, the potential client. Steve, the senior sales rep, has been in the business for 20 years. He's developed a strong book of business and a great reputation throughout the profession for being a hustler and a good deal maker. He's been recently assigned Jimmy a new sales rep to show him the ropes of the profession and how things get done at Top Bid Auctions. Jimmy shadows Steve a couple of days each week to make sales calls and work on ongoing auction projects. While traveling, Steve and Jimmy stop by to visit Doug. Doug is a former agent of Top Bid Auctions. He left to go out on his own about a year ago and open up becoming auctioneers. Doug and Steve developed a good friendship while Doug worked for Top Bid Auctions. Since both Steve and Jimmy will be staying overnight in Doug's area, Doug invites them to his house to grill a steak for dinner. After calling his wife and letting her know they're coming, of course. While they're grilling, out by the grill, Doug tells Steve that he has finally booked his first really big bank deal and is looking forward to getting things underway as soon as the banker from XYZ Bank returns from vacation next week. They enjoy the remainder of the evening. Good friends having good times. Later in the week, Steve is back in the office and he sees Ben, the owner of their company, and Mary, their marketing manager, discussing a new potential project. Ben stops, pulls Steve to the side, and thanks him for the help in training Jimmy. He said Jimmy's going to be a real winner. Ben informs Steve that Jimmy has landed an appointment with XYZ Bank to make a presentation on Monday to sell a large portfolio of assets. It seems that Jimmy heard through the grapevine that XYZ was in the market and planning to have an auction. And due to Jimmy's hustle, Top Bid was going to get to make a bid package presentation. In fact, Ben indicates his party that any part of the commission on the deal, that some of it will go to Steve for his excellent training of Jimmy. How should Steve respond? What are the relevant facts? What are the ethical issues? Who are the stakeholders, possible alternatives, and what action should be taken? Got to report to.
I need to know what kind of steak it was. It was a good steak.
Y'all welcome to scroll through it any way you want to.
The word of God says, don't let your left hand know what
Play to.
We're not preaching here, brother.
Go ahead, Dex.
Come on, Phil.
Let him have it, Kevin.
Come on, Phil.
I'll get called up here.
Represent us, Mom.
Represent.
Represent.
Come on, Jason.
Let's go. Got a time frame. Let's go. Hustle. Chop, chop.
Does anybody feel strongly one way or the other about it?
Let's see how they do in Texas.
No, we're a team here.
I'm not sure if anything illegal has occurred, but I'm sure that there's some shades of gray ethically.
all of y'all that came through class 1, and everybody in the room remembers everything, it's all either black or white. Or shades thereof, depending on how much grade you want to get in there.
Is anybody else here a
What is the
visual?
question?
I'm a visual learner.
It all, the questions on the very bottom.
Those are the questions, but really, you're Steve. What needs to happen?
Right.
Let's put a frame around it, let's talk about all the issues.
Can I make a statement? I'm a visual learner. I don't really know what happened in that story because that was a long story and I was up late karaokeing.
You want me to read it again?
Is it possible that we could draw a little diagram for the people who are bears with less stuffing in their brain, like me?
Well, that's true,
Because I think it's kind of complex. It looks complex.
It's really kind of easy.
He eavesdropped.
Steve took Jimmy, who was a guy in training, over to his friend's house.
Who's their competition?
Doug, who's their competition, and Doug, in confidence, I'm sure, said to his friend Steve, hey, I've got this job with XYZ company. So then they go into work, and Steve's boss says, hey, our new guy Jimmy just landed this great job at this XYZ company, which he stole from his friend Doug, and now Steve gets a big share of the pot if the deal goes through.
Right.
So the question, what does Steve do?
What does Steve do?
I think it's
Steve
necessary
takes
for Steve to disclose.
The, meeting that
Yeah, Steve takes the high road.
Okay, because we should, how should Steve respond? I mean, how do you think Steve should respond?
He should disclose to his boss what took place, and then I would say, over and above on that, it's not gonna be his decision on whether or not they pursue it, because he's not the boss. But I would, if I was Steve, say, and take that bonus that you were gonna pay to me, and use it for something else, I don't want a part of it. You just, and I would, yeah, and I would also get word back to my friend, who we had eavesdropped on and had that barbecue with.
Well, wait a minute, they haven't had the meeting yet, right?
Right, no.
So you cancel the meeting and apologize to the bank and get the hell out of this bad situation.
Yeah.
Yeah, Steve's got to speak up.
Steve's got to speak up and say,
Steve's
we're
gotta
canceling
speak
this meeting, it came about the wrong way. We don't operate that way, commission's aside, and we're gonna cancel the meeting.
Right. And kick Jim's ass.
Kick Jimmy's ass.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so we've got Steve should disclose, basically you call and cancel the meeting. Is there anything else?
I think it's Ben's decision whether or not to cancel the meeting.
Yeah,
But Steve should remove himself, and, with all respect, Jimmy as well.
Now, as Steve, would you call the other company, or would you tell Ben that he needs to call the other company?
Steve should have a conversation with Ben, saying, look, here's what happened at this meeting. From my personal ethical, standpoint, I don't want any part of this. It's, fair competition and all that, inside track, and no. Personally throw Jimmy under the bus and be like, you need to get rid of this plant, but, that's Ben's decision to make what to do with it beyond that point.
Okay, as an auction company or auctioneers, what are the ethical issues?
Except that the steak for free. That's wrong.
And it was a porterhouse.
I think people are getting hungry.
That's true, we are.
Okay, we'll make it easy.
Okay.
Steve brought the steaks, so he think for it, Jimmy brought the steaks. And paid for
So
it,
he
because
thinks
he
he's
paid for
entitled.
the information.
That's right.
I think it's
But I mean, truthfully, what are the ethical issues here?
Well, I guess one would be, is the information confidential? That would be the base point. If it was confidential,
Right.
then it leads us to,
Fine. Right.
it leads us to, should the parties, if they knew that was confidential, should have they excluded themselves or said, we really shouldn't be talking about this tonight?
Right, well, and probably Doug's company, Doug should have been talking about it in the first place.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because the bank hasn't signed a deal with him.
Still.
People, we're talking ethics.
So it went down.
Yeah, ethics.
I
in fact, you could say to him, it's a good thing I'm ethically sound, or I'd be snaking this deal for you.
I think we should have been
My
talking about
wife works for a big,
Great.
commercial real estate company, and, there'll be some things she goes, just don't ask them, because I'm not gonna tell you. You know, go ahead.
I was gonna say another issue player, it sounds like, Ben, the owner,
Yeah.
is making decisions about how commissions are gonna be shared. Jimmy may not be comfortable with, Jimmy may feel like it's part of the deal, that he got this piece of business on his